Okay, good morning. Call the meeting to order at 9:30. Start with the agenda. Mr. Frank, any additions from administration?
No, your worship.
Council, any additions, omissions? Seeing Councilor Wilhelm.
A motion that council adopts the agenda as presented.
Heather, the door has to stay open. It's a public meeting.
At least leave it cracked so we can maybe keep sound down.
They're
Motion on the floor to adopt the agenda as presented. Call the question. All in favor? That's carried. 3.1, adoption of the council minutes for February 14th, 2024. Councilor Dean.
I'll move as presented.
Motion on the floor. Call the question. All in favor? It's carried. We are early for that one, so we will move down to 7.1, I guess is the first one on the agenda there. Transfer site operations. Steve.
Good morning. A couple meetings ago, I was asked to get some pricing on security cameras and some different ideas as well. So I reached out to our security contractor and went over the sites with him. He gave me some pricing on installing cameras at our transfer sites. It figured out we would need between 3 and 4 cameras per site to get the coverages that would be required. That came into a cost of about $5,000 per site. We would also need an internet service at each site to make them effective. The install for the internet would be about $1,500, and then we would have a monthly cost at each site of about $140 for the internet per site. I was also asked to create a list for the take it or leave it on things that would be accepted and not accepted. And I've attached that list as well to this RFD. Looking at it, installing cameras at the transfer site will probably not give us the desired results that we would be looking for. Cameras are really good at identifying activities of what's being done, but the quality of them are not sufficient for prosecution, for identification. If we were to get these to set up for notifications of when people are there when they're not supposed to be there, us as staff would not have the ability to respond. And we've made calls in the past to the RCMP, and because it's just being trespassing, they've kind of kept them as a low priority, and the response times, because of the distance, is not usually good enough to be able to actually to find people there. So the recommendation is council accepts administration recommendation not to proceed with increased security at the transfer sites.
Okay, thank you. Definitely a little more expensive than I think any of us were anticipating there. We're probably close to 20 grand by the time you get to the end of the year. So, not that it's something we might not want to look at again in the future, but I don't have it currently. Any discussion from the council? Any other questions, comments? Councilor Coogan?
Yeah, through the chair to Steve, I agree with the recommendation because of the fact that it can't be used as a tool for us to convict or anything like that. The question I have is on the take it or leave it. If you've put a list of acceptable items and non-acceptable items in there, and how that's going to be dealt with as far as in 4.0 is the responsibility. Is that going to be written into our policy?
Through the chair to councillor, yes. That would be something, the list that was, I think last meeting, it was requested to form a list to bring back to council.
Yeah.
So this is where I did a bunch of research on a number of other municipalities' transfer sites, and this is basically a summary. Most other municipalities, their list is very similar to what this is. So this is just bring it forward because it was requested to, and I would like to get this added into the policy as well as signs made up with this and posted at each transfer site.
Yeah, just as an add-on there, I think that, when I looked at it, I think that's a very responsible way of doing it, because most of these things are like, you know, the car seats and helmets and stuff like that, there's a requirement there for safety, and so I think it's a really good comprehensive list, and I appreciate the way that you did that. Thank you.
Councillor Dean?
Thanks. I guess through to Steve, agree wholeheartedly with what Councillor Kulkin just said. I'm looking at clause 3.1, that the site attendant shall have final discretion. Excuse me, so I'm assuming what that means is somebody brings a bicycle in and the attendant has a quick look to make sure that it's not irreparable or something like that. Would that be the case? That's kind of what they do, they have a look and say yeah or no?
Yeah, through the chair, Councillor Dean, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's a lot of stuff that, I guess historically for the operator, at the transfer sites, the operators that we've had in the past that's retired since, they had a good sense of the community on what was easy come, easy go. And being that we have fairly new operators at the site, it's taking a little bit more time for them to get to know what people are actually looking for, right? So this list, as well as their discretion, is to help create or alleviate any issues at our sites.
So just to expand upon that, then, if somebody was to bring something that wasn't on the acceptable list, does the site attendant have the opportunity to say, you know what, yeah, I know that'll likely go, let's take that, or are they just saying no?
Through the chair to the councillor, I'd like to make it as easy as possible. You know, I mean, obviously, if somebody goes to the attendant and say, I'm looking for such and such a thing, maybe they can get people in contact with each other or something. But there's a lot of stuff that we would like just not to be around because of the potential liabilities and hazards that it could create for the county.
Okay, thanks.
Your worship, if I'm, for example, if on the list puzzles, if somebody wants to drop off puzzles, which is similar to games, I guess, it would probably be at the discretion of the individual to be acceptable. Right?
I have a quick question. I'll go with Councillor Kulkin. Given we have kind of two things here on this RFD, one with the list and one with the security cameras, would it be pertinent to do, I guess, a recommended action for the first part and then a second motion to move the itemized list to GMP along with the transfer site policy again?
Yeah, your worship, members of council, there is direction to draft a policy which includes take or leave it. And as part of that policy, Mr. Hollett has indicated that there will be this list.
Yeah, no, I was just looking at the recommendation on the RFD. Kind of have two separate things on here, but we only have the one recommendation. So I was
No,
just
but sorry, your worship, the direction is to accept it for information. We already have the direction to do the policy, to have take or leave it in the policy. So Mr. Hollett was just providing that information because it was directed to him to bring it back here. So again, the GMP has already given us direction a week ago, and that will be part of the policy. So
just
not
making sure,
required.
'cause we had a couple things here. Councillor Kulkin and Councillor Dean.
Okay, I'll make a motion then that council accepts administration's recommendation not to proceed with the increased security at Woodlands County transfer stations.
Okay, Councillor Dean, speaking to the motion.
Well, I'm not really speaking to the motion, but to your point that we have two separate things going on, and Mr. Hollett is going to accept our information and put it in the policy. I want to speak to that process, so do we want to do that after this vote on this motion?
We'll do the vote the first one, then we'll come back to
Okay.
your question. Okay, so question on the floor, recommendation from Councillor Kulkin. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Go ahead, Councillor Dean.
Thank you. So I don't want to belabor this issue, but consumers' demands change over time. And what is not on this list today, very likely in 3 years or 5 years, you know, there's gonna be something that comes along that young families use and pass on, just through technology, et cetera. And I'm wondering if it would make sense to ask our transfer station operators just to kind of keep a list of commonly asked or commonly brought items that are turned away that they may think should be added.
Councillor Williams?
I was just gonna say, acceptable items, it's so hard because there's a million things in this world that you might not think of that somebody can't, and then it leaves that area. Is it better to just make a not acceptable one, like stuffed animals, mattresses, all that stuff is so obvious that there's a possibility of bugs or whatever. To have an acceptable items list, like if this was a guideline, like, hey, here's some things that we'd like to see here, not limiting it to that. Just because I don't think anybody here wants to go over a list every 2 years and change it and update it. I think the not acceptable is really good, and you leave it up to that site attendant. Steve made a really good point. The old dump guy that I attend, he was sort of the gatekeeper. If something came there, he's like, don't move in the bin, or hey, that's something that will, let's take it over there. He was very good at it, and it takes experience for sure, but I think maybe a not acceptables list would be the best.
I think if we fall in the 3.1 under the discretion, that it's still within our site attendant's discretion on the items. I think we'll
As long as they
cover
do
that.
have power to do that, because if somebody drives in there and they see, you know, a wooden chair and it's on furniture, and they aren't gonna get in trouble for that one or whatever, right? Just don't wanna handcuff them.
Your worship, members of council, once the draft policy comes in front of council, you can continue
We'll
that
have more
discussion.
discussion when it comes back. Okay, so with that, we are still got a couple minutes here before the public hearing. I think we can get 7.2 wrapped up. So you wanna continue there, Mr. Hollett?
Okay, there was an RFP posted on APC, looking for, bids on the CYZU Airport Runway 1129 Rehabilitation Project RFP. We received 5 bids, and the list of the 5 bids that were there. We took the different proposals that were sent to us, and we had a list that was included in RFP that we evaluated them by. And we have an independent panel that goes through these RFPs and gives their feedback on them. And HMRO achieved the highest score. And I guess the recommendation would be that council award CYZU Airport Runway 1129 Rehabilitation Project to HMRO counseling or consulting for $96,984 plus tax.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on the green cost here? Councillor Coogan?
Yeah, just through the chair to Steve, what does this rehab what is it all going to do?
Through the chair to councillor. This is for the engineering we've applied for the STIP grant for next year to resurface and rehabilitate our runway. So this is to have everything, all the engineering done to come create what needs to be done with our runway. So this will become coring and checking the asphalt conditions, the identified areas that were in the report that there's some extra remedial work that needs to be done. This will find out what needs to be done and make the recommendation on how to fix that runway to get it back to where it should be.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Not seeing any. Anyone want to make a motion? Councillor Dean?
I'll move that council award the CYZU Airport Runway 1129 Rehab Project to HM Aero Aviation Consulting for the amount of $96,984 plus tax.
Okay, motion on the floor. Any discussion on that motion? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All in favor? That one's carried. We are at 9:45 now, so right on time here. Yes, go. this. Move up to 4.1. I'll declare the public hearing for bylaw number 611/24 draft Woodlands County Municipal Development Plan reconvened at 9:45 a.m. Just take a look. We don't see anyone in the public. We have to run through introductions. Do we, Mr. Frank?
No, I'm just, who's VB on
Vicky,
Oh,
your
okay,
consultant.
okay, thank you. I just couldn't see that far. There she is. So that's the only individual, your worship, that
So the only other person we got online there is our consultant and Mrs. Fortin from up in the fort there.
Yeah.
So continue down here, I guess. Move back to number 2 here. I'll ask the Director of Community Services to provide the purpose and background of the hearing.
Okay, so council gave first reading to bylaw 611/24, which is our draft Woodlands County Municipal Development Plan. That was done on January 31st. Council also passed a motion at that time to, of course, schedule public hearings in both Fort Assiniboine and Whitecourt. And today we are in the Whitecourt hearing. Council, per the Municipal Government Act, must by bylaw adopt a municipal development plan. Section 692 of the MGA requires that public hearing be held. The public hearings were advertised in our local newspapers, placed on the county website for 2 consecutive weeks, and that was pursuant to the MGA and our advertising bylaw. Section 636(2) of the Municipal Government Act does not require that the municipality notify the below for an amendment to a statutory document. However, out of courtesy and transparency, we did refer the document to our neighboring municipalities as well as the urban municipality within our boundaries. It was also sent to the local school boards for comment, as well as our indigenous settlements in the area. So attached are the comments. Last evening, you were provided 2 additional comments, one from the municipal district of Lesser Slave River, just commenting no concerns. And then, of course, we also received the one from the town of Whitecourt, which is requesting an extension to provide comment until March 20th, 2024. If you'd like, I can run through the key areas that have been changed in the municipal development plan, although we don't have anyone in attendance, but.
I know we don't have anybody in attendance, but possibly for anybody watching the video,
Sure.
it might be a good idea.
Okay. So key areas that were changed in the document, essentially the overall layout and reorganization of topic areas. We streamlined the content to reduce repetitiveness and ensure objectives and policies are achievable. We added some verbiage on how agricultural land is categorized, in particular using farmland assessment valuation. More information on the FAV is referenced below in my notes. More detailed subdivision of the land resulting in that utilization of the FAV will be reviewed in our land use bylaw review. Added a new section with respect to reconciliation. We have removed outdated jargon and language and added some more contemporary language into the document, updated references to government agencies. We've added more context to the document on the environment in response to events such as flooding, wildfire, and development in more hazardous areas. Lands with steep slopes were, of course, located within those flood hazard areas. We've added some verbiage around the alternative energy generation and emerging industries that may offer economic opportunity in the county. We've added some more robust commentary and policies to the economic development section. And we've, of course, created and added an implementation task summary. This is new to the MDP document, which outlines some tasks and objectives noted throughout the document, who's responsible for implementing that task, and a time frame as to when we should start some of those items. For example, area structure plans for our hamlets is just one of the many tasks that have been identified in the document. Just going a little further into the farmland assessment valuation, the county, of course, is going to be using the assessed farmland values of 114.46 per acre or greater is considered better agricultural land. And we're going to look at quarter sections of land with a valuation of 65% of the FAV being 114.46, just as a threshold for determining subdivision in the future. And that's those amendments.
Okay. So I will, I guess, start here. Any other questions from council? I know we discussed this last night. Councillor Coogan?
Yeah, just a couple of questions. One of the things that came up last night is that there's a difficulty for some of the folks to understand the difference between assessed value and market value. And so that was a question that was brought up that, how can we set it at 114 because it's not reasonable? And so I explained that to them.
Okay, yeah.
And the second question would be, is it possible, if this is extended at all, to have this conversation at an MPC? Or is that procedurally something that we do?
So I'll answer the first one through the chair to Councillor
Okay.
Kilkin. So market value and farmland assessments are two different valuations. Farmland assessment is legislatively assigned, so it's not based on market. So that number doesn't change drastically
change.
because it is, essentially a legislated number because it's based on soil type, topography, use of the agricultural ability of the land and things like that. So it's a legislated, it's not market value, which is, of course, fluctuates pursuant to whatever the sales in the area may be at the time. With respect to the second one, you're wanting to take it back to the Municipal Planning Commission? Is
I'm
that-
just wondering if that was procedurally, if that ever goes, like this document would ever go through MPC.
So through the chair to Councillor Kilkin, we allotted the Municipal Planning Commission members an opportunity at the November open houses to be able to attend. We extended an invitation to those individuals, and we did receive comment back from two of the members at large with respect to what they felt maybe some tweaks could be, and I believe we actually took some of those into consideration when the amendments were made.
Okay. Anything else in council? Okay, I will move down. We have no members of the public here to speak tonight, or today, this morning, I guess. Come down, any final comments or questions from council before we move our way through the list, I guess? Not seeing any. Now, we did have, I guess, a request from the town of Whitecourt. They've had the document in front of them from their administration for, I believe it's 3 weeks now, Joan?
Yes,
Before-
February 6th is the date that we sent
Along
it
with
in.
the other municipalities in there. They asked for a request. The other 7 managed to respect the time frame that we had and be able to give us an answer within that. Just at this point with council, are we going to be looking for another public hearing, or are we going to close the discussion? Just looking for Councillor Dean.
So, I'm not sure that I can answer that question, but I don't see why we can't close this hearing, and it's going to be presented to council at a future date for a motion to adopt it, right? And if that came before council after the town of Whitecourt had provided their comments, then administration would be able to let us know what the contents of their comments were coming back, and we react to it. I'm assuming there's not going to be any amendments requested. I think they just want time to review, so I don't see an issue in
Joan,
granting
looks
that
like she's
delay.
ready to say it.
Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor Dean, the only thing is if they do happen to have a request for amendment, is that council can't take into consideration what that is if the public hearing's been closed. You
Okay.
have to hear it all under that public hearing.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then we go forward to make those amendments.
I said my My only concern, like, I have nothing, you know, if we're going to offer them the time, you know, fair enough to come back, but I also, you know, what we'll say, from our point, if the town's reached out to us before with looking for information or looking for something on it and giving us a date that they need the answer by, we try to respect their time frame and we try to get them the answer by that. And, you know, like, they're the only one out of the group of individuals who haven't had the opportunity within the last 3 weeks to come back to us. Everybody else has been able to respect that time frame. That's, you know, if we want to give them the time, we'll give them the time. Bearing in mind, again, we do need to advertise, you know, there will be nominal costs, not much, but there will be extra costs and extra, you know, time on administration to reschedule and put everything back out. And I just, you know, either way, I'm okay, but like I said, we did have a time frame. They, in my opinion, they could have respected that time frame too. Councillor Coogan?
Yeah, through the chair to council. I thought about this a bit, and the reality is that we expect our public, people that have input into that, we give them the notice, we give them the opportunity to attend all of these things. This has been an ongoing process for a period of time. And I guess my question is if there's been 3 weeks to respond, and everybody else is given that opportunity, and the town chose for whatever reason not to participate in that, you know, we've done our job as a council and as administration to provide that time frame. So the question that I would ask is then why are we extending this? That would be my question.
Councillor Dean?
So to answer that question, I guess just out of courtesy and good relations. But procedurally, I'm a little unclear. So if we decide that we're going to extend that deadline for them, we can't close this public hearing, is that correct?
Through
We'll
the
need
chair,
to
yeah.
recess the public hearing to
Recess.
March 27th.
And then resume?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So just looking for a motion either way from if we want to declare the public hearing closed or if we want to recess it till March 27th.
I'm not sure. Vicky, did you have a comment?
Sorry.
Sorry.
I just wanted to mention that the implementation plan that is currently in the body of the text of the municipal development plan may want to be moved into an appendix and not form part of the bylaw, because if council chooses not to move forward with some of those tasks, then it would be non-compliance with the bylaw. So I wanted to bring that to the public hearing because that change would be made before consideration of second and third reading, and it needs to be on the public record.
Thank you, Vicky.
All right.
Makes sense.
Councillor Dean?
Sorry, I'm unclear as to what would have to be moved to an appendix.
So there's the implementation plan.
It's page 76.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and it's a list of things that we think should happen. And then if they don't occur, currently as it's written, it is part of the body of the text of the bylaw. So what we should probably consider doing is shift that to an appendix, and the appendix would say not forming part of the bylaw. So that if that implementation table wants to be edited or changed over time, you don't have to open up the whole bylaw to make those changes and do a formal public hearing process every time you want to change the implementation plan.
All right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Councillor Wilhelm?
Through the chair to council. So I share the frustration that the town wasn't able to get their comments in time, but we don't quite know why that was. While it is an annoyance for us to have to delay this process, I think as one of our potential biggest partners as we move forward in the future, our MDP and the MDP that we're developing is important to them as well, and I think maybe we should just give them the time to make any comments that they have on it. I mean, we don't have to apply those comments when they come in, but giving them the chance to opening that door and allowing them to make the comments as needed. They might come back with something very positive that we would have missed if we hadn't given them the chance to make those comments. So I'm in favor of extending the time frame for them.
Councillor Dean,
So in a motion, that would be to recess the public hearing
till March 27th.
until March 27th.
Yeah. If it's okay with council, I have it written in front of me here. I can make the motion.
Sure.
So I'll make the motion that council recesses public hearing amending bylaw 611/24 till March 27th, 2024's council meeting at 9:45 a.m. in the White Court Council Chambers. A motion on the floor. Any discussion on that? Not seeing any. I call the question. All in favor? Okay. One's carried. And we move on. Where are we at now here?
8-1.
8.1, Economic Developers of Alberta Award of Excellence nomination for the Fort Assiniboine Bi-centennial celebration. Mr. Roach, good morning.
Good morning, Council. Pleasure to be here in front of you once again, and I bring a simple item in front of you today just simply for information. As you all know, EDA, Economic Developers of Alberta, on an annual basis have their awards of excellence. The awards are presented at the EDA conference, which we have a number of members of council and our Economic Development Committee attending. So it was just to clarify with everybody that you're aware that we want to put in an application on behalf of the Fort Assiniboine Bi-centennial organizing group. And there are a number of categories and that sort of thing within the awards, and the category that we are applying to is the, I believe it was the community collaboration. And I apologize that I can't remember that off the top of my head. But a regional collaboration, there we go. So just to give you a quick update that we have this in the pipeline, and we'll know for sure the night of the awards ceremony, but given the success and the time and energy that council put into that event, it just seemed worthy to be put forward for an award nomination.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? Councillor Coolgan?
Yeah, one of the things that I would like to comment on is that the regional collaboration is one of the strategic parts of our strategic plan. And when this happened, I don't think anybody really understood the amount of collaboration that would have to be involved in. And I think we had 5 municipalities, and a number of businesses that involved themselves in this. And the outcome was pretty incredible because it allowed us to also make connections with, under the Regional Economic Development Alliances, with a number of these municipalities are also searching for those opportunities to expand their horizons. And the outcome was pretty incredible because now what we have is we have a legacy project which is now including a number of schools all the way from Hinton to Westlock and Athabasca who want to get involved in this regional recreational development based on Canadian Voyageur Brigade Society. So we got a pretty big impact from what happened there that we can't really measure the economic benefit from yet, but I'm sure that there's going to be something in the future. So when I was at the EDA, that was one of the things that they really were, promoting as part of successes in municipalities is these collaborations. So I think it's great that you went to the extent to get us involved in this, and I support that.
Councillor Dean?
Just concur. I mean, that event was really impactful for lots of people, lots of groups, and I'd be happy to move that council accepts the nomination of the Fort Assiniboine Bicentennial Celebration for a 2024 EDA Award of Excellence as information.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. Motion on the floor, any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor? That one's carried. Thank you very much again, Mr. Roach.
Council, you're welcome.
Policy 7002, community organization, capital and operating grant amendments. Ms. Anderson.
Good morning, Council.
Good morning, Heather. How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Oh, not so bad.
Good, good. So before you today is a draft of amended policy 7002, community organization, capital and operating grants as presented. At the Governance and Priorities Committee last week, we had brought this forward and we've included everything in the draft. That draft policy has all the amendments mentioned and is included for your approval.
I definitely want to say thank you very much for the work in this. I know when we originally drafted this, it was just when COVID was hitting, and we found some holes in the policy fairly quick, and it's been amended a couple times. But being able to provide a little bit more funding to some of our community halls, they are the backbone of a lot of the communities, and I definitely support this. Councillor Dean?
If I could just add, based on my understanding, the additional money that these groups are likely to receive is already in the budget anyway. It just hadn't been spent because there was that rebate, if you call it.
Yes.
Councillor Wilhelm?
I'll motion that council approves the amended policy 7002, community organizational capital, and operating grant as presented.
Okay, motion on the floor. Any discussion on that one? Not seeing any. Call the question. All in favor? Now it's carried. Thank you very much. Mountain Pine Beetle Grant Program. So that'd be Dawn.
Good morning, Council.
Good morning, Dawn.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we got whenever you're ready there.
Perfect. Okay, so what you have in front of you is, as information, our Mountain Pine Beetle Grant for this year. We are no longer going to be eligible for said grant. They have discovered over many years of research data that the mountain pine beetle populations are down significantly, and they don't expect that they will rebound because of our colder temperatures that we've had. So for this year, they have basically minimized the area that the control work will be being done, and that is to the Calgary forest area only. And there are maps attached as well showing that area, as well as to the progression of the population decline over the past several years. So that is also in your package. There's also a letter there from the Forest Health Officer for Alberta Forestry and Parks stating basically what I've just told you as far as the grant goes. So the bottom line is it's not really a budget impact because it was basically an in and out. So we would get the grant funds in as our revenue, and then what we would spend in our expense side of things was basically what the grant would have been. So it's basically a minimal impact, zero impact to the final line of the budget. So. And that's basically just for council's information that we won't be doing any counts or any mountain pine beetle work this year.
Hey, thank you, Don. I do have a quick question. I know in the past, industry was able to work with the province also on, I guess, kind of side by side with the municipalities in the mountain pine. Is there still for, say, any of our players in their FMA up here, or is that for private industry kind of gone too?
So the province is still going to be monitoring the mountain pine beetle situation. I'm not sure what the partnership level is going to be for other players in the industry, but they did say that they will continue to monitor, and if we see the pine beetle populations increasing, then they will make grant funding available to us at that point. So, I like I said, I don't really know exactly what they would provide for the FMA holders.
Okay. Thanks, Don. Any other questions for Don? Councillor Williams?
I'll just make a motion that council accepts the Mountain Pine Beetle Grant Program correspondence as information.
Okay, motion on the floor. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All in favor? That one's carried.
Thank you.
8.4, National Police Federation Budget Update. Mr. Frank?
Your worship, members of council, the National Police Federation is seeking a request for you to write to the provincial government to ask that the provincial government hire additional RCMP for the rural area because most of their funding that recently announced has gone to the big cities. So we're recommending that council support that request, and we'll send off a letter to the province in regards to asking for additional RCMP resources.
I do have, I guess, a quick question on this. I'm not sure if we have any answers, but given the police model and the funding model that's out there currently, if, you know, I have nothing against asking for more RCMP and, you know, help fill in a lot of those holes, but is there going to be an impact to the municipalities after if we end up on a drive for more RCMP rurally?
Would there be a cost associated with the increase? The answer is yes, due to the fact that now every municipality pays for policing, a portion of that. So as their budget increases, your budget would increase. Now, again, the model that they use for determining our costs are combination of equalized assessment, population, and there's a third. So depending on what happens, if your population goes up and your equalized go up, you would pay more a piece of the pie, and versus if your equalized goes down and your population goes down.
Thank you. Councilor, you see your hand up there.
Yeah, thank you. To administration, conversation between Councillor Burrows and retired Staff Sergeant Dodds. What I was understanding out of that conversation is that if an allotment, and I may be using the wrong terms, I apologize for that, at a detachment is, let's say it's 8, and they can only staff 7, the municipality still pays for 8.
Yeah, your worship, my understanding is we get an invoice annually from the province in regards based on that formula.
Okay.
Whether those positions are vacant or where those positions are, that's the decision of the province.
So if this was successful, if this pitch to bring more officers into the rural, and we went from 7 to 8, then that's obviously more coverage, which is a good thing.
Yeah, and you may not necessarily pay for that additional resource depending on the formula, right? And that is calculated annually.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from council? Councilor Williams?
I was just gonna make a comment, but I don't think we've been fully staffed for more than a little bit currently with the positions, let alone try and ask for more to be put in. I think we should write them back saying, please fill our current positions before you try and get more budget for people to potentially come. So just a comment.
Anything else from council? Councilor Coogan?
Yeah, I'll make the motion that council direct administration to write a letter to the government of Alberta requesting additional resources in the community and in the province of Alberta.
A motion on the floor. Any discussion on that motion, council? Not seeing any. Call the question. All in favor? That one's carried. 9.1, correspondence and information items. Anything there, council? Councilor Wilhelm?
Motion that council accepts correspondence and information items as circulated.
Okay, motion on the floor. Call the question. All in favor? That one is carried. Let's move down. Council reports and questions. We'll start over with Councilor Williams. Kind of over there by yourselves.
Yeah, quiet. I had a BARC meeting I attended virtually, and then we had a budget open house last couple of weeks. Missed the GMP meeting, but last night I thought the budget meeting went really well, and the open house for this NDP. I think there's been a lot of work put into that. And Joan and Vicky are probably just about ready to wrap that up, but yeah, that's what I've been up to.
Okay, any questions for Councillor Williams? Councillor Cogan?
Yeah, I apologize for not being able to give a report at the last meeting because my Zoom feed froze up continuously and I couldn't get in and out. So I've got a few things that are still from the 5th and 6th of January. We had the engagement sessions out here at Beetle River Casino, and it was an incredibly good session. Out of that, we have now 10 municipalities who are interested in having a look at what a regional economic development alliance would look like and how to do that. And another interesting development is that there's a number of regional economic alliances in northern Alberta that are looking to change their model as well, because the model that we have in the economic alliances north of the economic corridor of Edmonton, Calgary, don't function the same way. So it was a really positive outcome. Had a Barhead and Housing District Association meeting as well on the 5th. We had the MPC meeting on the 7th. Had a good conversation over community development and how we have to approach some of those issues on the 8th with community services with Heather. Then we met with Andrew and Lan on the 13th to discuss tax policy, which was really a good exercise, and I really got a lot out of that. The 14th, of course, that's the meeting that I couldn't get in on. Then we had an FCSS meeting on the 15th in Barhead. I did bring up regional community development strategy there, and it was well received, and I've got a lot of information back from Karen Garapi on some of the ways that municipalities can approach community development. So that was a really productive meeting. And then on the 16th, we had a RETA meeting, and it was a debriefing to figure out the next steps for the engagement session. And we're in the process of forming an advisory circle with a lot of the individuals that were at the engagement session so that we can carry on figuring out exactly how growth Alberta will work in the future. And you know, it's a place we've been trying to get to for a couple of years, and under, I'm sure, Mr. Roach's frustration that we didn't move as quickly as we should have on some of this stuff, just because of some of the issues that we faced. We're finally at a point now where we can really sink our teeth into this regional economic development strategy. Then we had an MPC and a governance and priorities on the 21st. And then, of course, our 2 meetings, Monday and Tuesday, on the cold mix and budget. And that brings us to today.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Cogan? No. Councillor Wilhelm?
I've had a quiet last 2 weeks, so nothing to report on. But I do have an interesting one upcoming next Friday. The Laxton Foundation has a housing demand and capital planning workshop, and there are 2 potential proposed projects, one for Marythorpe and one for Whitecourt for senior housing. So we're looking at what that financing and the potential of getting a new facility in the area for seniors will be. So should have some good information after that workshop next Friday and see what timeframes and the potentiality of it happening is. Other than that, I got nothing.
Hey, any questions for Councillor Wilhelm? Councillor Dean?
Thanks. So I attended a number of different events over the last couple of weeks. On the 15th, along with the CEO, I was at the Emerging Trends in the Municipal Law that was put on by our solicitors. And one of the real interesting takeaways for me was how the HR world is evolving. And, you know, we're not necessarily involved in HR, but indirectly we sure are. So it was interesting to hear how that whole environment is changing. Then on the 20th, I was in Grand Prairie at the Growing the North annual conference, and that really has more of a local flavor than the EDA, and there's really relevant breakout sessions, things like rural connectivity and you know, the more micro things rather than the real macro stuff. So it's always a great conference. And on the 25th, I volunteered with the Whitecourt District County Arts Society. They put on a comedian at St. Joseph's Parish Hall, and it was a full house, and everybody had lots of laughs. And that organization is the group that brings musical acts to town, etc. And so I was happy to spend some time helping out. And then, like the rest of council, I attended the open houses on Monday and Tuesday. I was interested to see the different focus on the two different nights. You know, when we were here on Monday, and there were 50 people in the audience, they had a very singular issue that they were concerned with, and that was cold mix rehab and the whole future of that. And I think that discussion went very well. I think it was well received by the residents that, you know, we're in the information gathering stage and we want to come back with a plan that makes sense. And then last night, you know, the issue of gravel and gravel trucks moving through the town continues to be an issue for Fort Assiniboine, and we'll just have to work with the residents there. But they were good open houses. Nice to see the amount of public comments that were made, and you know, we as a council, we learn when they bring their local things. So yeah, that was it for me.
Okay, questions for Councillor Dean? Okay, I guess I'll start here with mine. I had a Community Futures meeting here to start with. I really actually kind of enjoy being part of that group, seeing a lot of what they do and how they support business, new growth, or new business coming in or expanding on business, and just kind of how they what they're able to do aside, you know, as a different style lender versus some of the other banks. It's nice to actually sit on that board and kind of see what's available. Was able to sit on a couple training modules for Community Futures, and the first one I was on, the facilitator ended up using the local Community Futures website for 90% of their examples on how to do things. So huge shout out to Michelle and the staff down there. They're doing fantastic, and it's recognized by everybody else in the Community Futures, I guess, kind of establishments. Had a Woodlands Library county meeting. It was an organizational meeting. Had a couple new members. One showed up. One unfortunately wasn't available to be there, but we took a look at the budgets, kind of where they're at. They had their lines, everything listed out for what they're doing. Some new laptops and stuff this year. Some of their electronics are highly outdated, so we're gotta bring those back up. And we had a great discussion with Heather on the phone. She called talking about some of the extra money that we put into the budget line for libraries to kind of come out of the social, economic,
Needs assessment.
Needs assessment, there you go, the needs assessment for the area. And given that the libraries in the county, they're more than just a library, they're kind of a social hub for a lot of places, especially up in the Fort area and Blue Ridge for a lot of programming and everything. And Heather Anderson and her group are working with the libraries on trying to access more funds for them to be able to facilitate more programs that are more specific for the needs in those areas for different individual groups. So I'm really excited to see where they come with that. The girls in the library were actually, you know, after the conversation, we spent a lot of time basically brainstorming on, you know, what could be possible. So waiting for our next meeting there to see what they come back with, because I know they'll have some great ideas on what we can do. Had our MPC meeting, granted a couple permits for some businesses and a garden suite, G&P, and then the budget open houses here last couple nights. Very well attended, both of them. One thing I know came out, I've seen lots of writing from administration side, but just kind of wanted to put out there in the public. One, obviously the sign in Fort Assiniboine. I know speaking with Joan, we do have a plan, or they're talking about possibly a plan for the communication sign up there. So for anybody watching from the public, it is something that is looking, and we are looking at, we are trying to address the issue up there. And two other things. One, we had the discussion around sign placement. They were talking about possibly a second stop sign in that one intersection that's of concern in the fort. If we can just look into it and see the viability.
Yeah, your worship, council will contact Alberta Transportation in regards to that possibility.
And then the third one got was come from multiple people there. If at some point in one of our meetings, if we can kind of get a breakdown on what we're receiving in gravel royalties and kind of see from the areas, you know, from the Whitecourt area, the Fort area, just so we got a better understanding where the revenue and those royalties are coming.
Yeah, your worship, members of council, just Mr. World will be at the, I'm trying to think, when's our next council meeting? The 27th of March?
March 13th.
March 13th. Yes, he will be, and he's got a report on a couple other financial matters. So.
No, that's currently what I have. I seen Councillor Cooking your hand, and then Councillor Dean's hand was up.
Yeah, I just have a question. I did a little bit of research last night on entering a numbered highway, which is what's happening in the fort. If I do not stop at the end of my driveway, which enters a number highway, I get ticketed. And so I'm just wondering, you know, how quickly we need to move on this, because that stop sign, whether it's a liability or not, it was there before. And if it was there before, then obviously there should be a criteria and all of that stuff, because that is a county responsibility. So I'd just like to make sure that we move on that relatively quickly.
I know there was a lot of concern from the individuals. Unfortunately, they said Alberta Transport took a look and feels that's the best spot for where the sign is, but the residents obviously disagree. So,
well, but that's on their property. The county also has a responsibility.
Yeah, so Councillor Cogan is correct that you have to stop prior to entering into a primary highway or any, so then what makes that any different in regards to, because that is a secondary highway?
Yep.
Yeah.
Councillor Dean, you're seeing your hand up there?
Yeah, I mean, that's just logical. That makes the most sense for sure. But I wonder in your conversations with Alberta Transportation, if, you know how sometimes you'll see signs that says new intersection or something new. So those people that are traveling on that numbered highway, just be aware that there's potential risk there for somebody entering in the highway.
Any other questions, comments? Not seeing any. Can I get a motion to move the council reports? Councillor Coogan.
I'll move that the council reports be accepted as information.
Okay, thank you very much. Motion on the floor. Call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Brings us down to our service tracker monthly report for January 2024.
Even council, before you is the service tracker report for January 2024. As you can see, it's mostly snow plowing and sanding requests. We did also have a couple of employee kudos for their work clearing out the snow on the roads. Aside from that, the rest is pretty standard. I did also put comparables for the past couple of years for January for the month in each division as well.
See my district definitely jumped up from last year to this year, so it's just nice to see that people are using it. Any other comments, questions? Anything anybody want to talk about on there? Not seeing. Councillor Williams.
I can make a motion that council accepts the 2024 January monthly service tracker report information.
Okay, motion on the floor again. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Nikita. February infrastructure status report. Morning, Rick.
Morning. Okay, so to relieve and council, I am still doing some covering for Andre since he's gone. So I'd like to go through this report that I provided here and just I've got the highlights of any changes here. So I'll just hit on any of the changes that I'd made to the previous report. And I'm going to start on the operations update. Under the airport, I've got there highlighted small renovations have started in the airport with our staff. There is more to come, but they've just started doing, it turns out we need a hot water tank, and I think they're putting in some automatic blinds in the terminal right now, but there is still some bigger ones to come, but they actually have started on that. Under the wastewater, the PLC upgrades in Fort Assiniboine water plants have started. On the previous one, I think it was supposed to be a little while before it started, but they have started on that project, but they're still expecting later in the summer, or earlier in the summer to be finished yet. So that one's underway. Solid waste. Hamlet solid waste collection is back on schedule after the disruptions from the cold. So hopefully that's the end of the bitter cold till next year. Recreation, summer students. We've hired our 4 summer students for the summer, which is nice to get on that early. We usually, quite often we've been a little bit behind, and we beat everyone to the punch, I think, and got to pick our top 4 out of anyone else. So that worked out good for us. Okay, under the roads operations, partway down, the culvert steaming has been required in several areas, and it has exposed the need for upgrading our steaming units. We do have one in the budget for this year in Fort Assiniboine. However, the one that we've been running here has been having some issues, so we've been kind of limping along. So I don't know if that's something we'll look at this year, but it'll definitely be in next year's budget. And I don't know, not so much over on the Fort side, but this side we've had more springs show up this year than we've ever had. We've got springs showing up in ditches we haven't seen before. We're not sure if it's I've heard the way the fall came, the winter came, and all that has caused the springs. I heard this morning some guy said, well, it's because of the earthquakes and it's changed some stuff. But either way, we've had more springs and ice flows in our ditches than we have before, so we've been doing a lot of digging and steaming, which this time of year we haven't usually done that much, but we're keeping on top of it so far. And underneath that, one new full-time permanent operator has been hired to replace a operator from this area who is retiring at the end of the month. So we have filled that position, and that person will be done as of tomorrow is his last day actually actively working. Okay.
Just a quick question on that. I know we put in the budget for 2 equipment operators. Is that one of those, or is that extra?
Nope, that is just replacing the person that's retired. So I think those 2 other operators, we've been sort of directed to wait a little bit later in the season, and I think that'll tie into when we're getting some of the other equipment brought in, that we'll have more seats for these guys to be in. So those 2 operators haven't been put out yet.
Thank you.
Okay, now.
Sorry. Councilor Coogan?
Yeah, through the chair to Richard, I've asked for this before. What is the policy when you have a contractor that does paving on a road? What is the requirement by the county to where the approach is paved to?
I would, at this point, I wouldn't say we have anything in policy as far, you're talking about when they pave the aprons to the private driveways? Yeah, that is almost by contract base. So I know there was some that where we would direct them that we go right to property line. Others, they would pave just the radiuses of the curves. So there isn't anything specific in policy that we follow. And I guess part of that is we haven't paved a ton of roads, but if that's something that we would like to put into policy where we go to property line every time or just pave the radiuses. Go ahead.
Well, I guess the problem that I have is that there's 3 approaches that I'm aware of that are fairly steep. They're off Forest Creek Road. Mm-hmm. All of the other ones were paved to property line except those 3. And there's an 8-inch drop. It's a pain in the ass. And because they're steep approaches and they're used in the wintertime, I put a request in July to have them fix that, and nothing ever happened, and the contractor isn't there anymore.
Okay, so I'm not 100% sure of which ones you're referring to. I know there's one where there's that gravel pit that's hauling. Is that one of the ones?
It's the 3 approaches. There's the 2 on the south side of the road towards the highway, And then there's one just before the highway. It's the steep one that goes into
Okay.
our farm.
And what I understood with that contract is there was no allowance for gravel. So the contractor had said, like, we would do it, however, there was no, usually you might have miscellaneous gravel, 1,000 tons to do that blending. There was nothing in the contract, so the contractor said, we do it, however, there isn't money for it. So I did mention to our foreman over there is that if any of those do come up, that we're just gonna have to go grab some gravel and we'll have to blend those ourselves. So I'll remind him of that. That's just, I'd call that a small oversight of that contract that went out. Generally, that would be something that was a provision that was in there, just wasn't on that one. So we will deal with those as they come up.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Continue with your.
Okay, so moving on to the capital list here. Under that second bridge replacement there, the one ending in 525, I'm deleting the last line of that. And similar for the next one behind it, we've actually, MPA has been awarded those engineering contracts. So they are currently working on the tenders to put out for those bridges. So that's a little adjustment from the document you have in front of you. And then nothing here has changed. Actually, sorry, Hard Luck Canyon, not a change, but just a highlight there that the engineers did visit the site this week. So they've started working on those stairs. They've gone out, they've done a bit of an analysis. They've looked at the stairs that they're looking at replacing. And they've also made some comments on a couple of the bridge structures we have that are gonna need some attention. So that'll probably be something that will be brought up here in the next month or so, their results of their initial inspection. But as far as the stairs go, they've started working on that. And then on the top of the next page, it was an oversight by me, the grain bag roller, has been removed from our budget. I think a lot of the equipment they have now come with them, so we didn't see the need for it. So that was discussed, I just hadn't removed that from the list, so that one's now gone. Down to the skid steer replacement. So on that one, we have gone out, we've got pricing, and we're partway through doing demos on some of the units. So that's ongoing. Hopefully, after this week, we should have demoed the ones that we're looking at, and then we'll possibly at the next meeting be coming back with a recommendation for that and the results. The zero-turn mower underneath that has been purchased, and we've got that ready to go this spring. And if we go down to the Runway Airport Engineering, when I did up this document, the last sentence in that should have been struck out, and the RFD was the one that was awarded today. So that one has been completed as far as awarding the engineering. And that is about all the updates that was on the list compared to January.
Councilor Wilhelm?
Through the chair to administration. So with regards, I was looking at the information under the cold mix application, and we've had now the 2 public hearings talking about it. I'm assuming all the information that's come from those hearings will be compiled, and we must have a pretty short time frame if we're going to implement any of the money that we put into the budget for 2024 to actually get engineering going. Do we have an idea of when an RFD for the cold mix plan will be coming forward to council?
To Councillor Wilhelm, I honestly can't give you a solid answer on that, as I haven't really been involved with it up until this point, but I do think there should be some meetings with council and administration on that topic specifically to go through. I had a few, probably 3 questions that had come up at the meeting that were really valid questions on the stuff that we had presented to them, and I wasn't really able to give them a good answer, but I feel they're really good questions that should be brought up and discussed among council, and I think there needs to be maybe an agreement with council on a general direction on where we go, because there is so many options at this point. We also need to probably start out with a list of the roads that will be affected by this, and then maybe prioritize, and then look at more details of this tax that they're looking at doing.
Definitely agree. We need kind of a more robust plan for what we're doing instead of something kind of in theory right now, but sooner than later is probably better.
With regards to that, through the chair to administration, how much time would you need, or do you think you would need to prepare that? So if we want to bring that to a GNP for further discussion, would you guys need it a month, 3 weeks?
I honestly wouldn't think it would be that much. I think it's gonna be more so questions that we would like to bring forward to say, okay, what does everyone feel? How do we want to respond to some of these requests? Like there's the 4 methods of how you decide how you're going to apply that tax. There was quite a few examples of where any one of those might be very lopsided on a particular road. So some of that I felt maybe every road, maybe you look at each individually one different on how you're gonna divide up that tax. Because on certain cases, one guy's not gonna pay anything and another person might pay a whole bunch depending on which of those methods you go. So something to say, maybe they're open to different ones per road. You know, and another question that hadn't really, I'd thought about it, didn't come up, but if they decide, you know, you guys go to this, you put this out and they petition it, and they come back successful with the petition saying, we're not in favor with the amounts or whatever, from what I understand, that would cancel that job for that year. So then they're like, well, what happens then? And I guess I think about it, and it would be, do we turn it back to gravel? Or do they say, you can live with you know, the existing road until next year and we take another run at it and see. So those are some of the questions on what will happen if that does happen. That hasn't come up, so some of those questions are really tough to answer when they're asking at those meetings.
Mr. Frank, and then Councillor Will.
Yeah, your worship, members of council, the intent is to bring the information back to council to make a preliminary decision whether you're gonna proceed with the local improvement, right? If council then decides to proceed with the local improvement discussions and which format that you would do, we would then put a priority list based on the program of 7 years, because there's 7, I believe, if I remember correctly, there are 7 areas that we would then do over the time, and then that priority would then come to council for consideration. Once council makes that final decision, then the tendering process and the upgrades to that would occur. So the first year of that 7-year program, if you're going through it, may be later this year, but once you know the program, then it could be a more smoother process in year 2 to 6.
Councillor Will.
So knowing that information, the March 20th GNP meeting, would that give you guys enough time to get everything together so we could start the discussion on this program, giving Andre time to get back from vacation? And
Yeah, there is no March 20th GMP. We have to reschedule that, right? Correct?
Yes.
Because you're at convention that day.
but it's over at noon, so we could come back for a meeting.
Did they not cancel?
I got it on my calendar still.
It's on my calendar, dude.
Are we having, did we not bring
I thought we did an RFD for that.
to council on the last meeting?
Yeah. Hang on, looking for it.
I may have thought that.
Councillor Cogan.
Yeah, okay, through the chair to, Richard, you brought up a really good point on the policy on those aprons. We're paving a couple of roads this year out here. There's, so I think maybe it would be prudent for us to have a look at that policy and see whether we don't make sure that that's dealt with, because the problem you have by cutting them off short halfway down your approaches is that if you put gravel in there, it squeezes out and it becomes, because it's such a square cut that they do. And on Horse Creek Road, it's obvious that they just did the ones that they wanted to do because a lot of them were done all the way to the property line. So maybe we should have a review of that policy, and I'd be willing to make a motion that we have a look at that policy, bring it back to council to make sure that we identify that and not have that same problem somewhere else.
Okay, so through the brief to council, some of the ones that they did do, I did talk to the contractor. What they actually did, they did on some of them where they were able to, if we had enough existing gravel, they did on their own dime, they went and they kind of pulled some of that gravel in to help blend some of those. Probably more so on the roads as opposed to the private approaches, just because of the high traffic. And we have, like, whenever we pave, you're gonna have that sharp cutoff, whether it's partway down the approach or if you go to property line, you've always got, like, you wanna have a thick, you don't wanna have your apron asphalt go and taper down to nothing, because then that just breaks off. So you're gonna have a gravel transition, whether it's here or there. With these being resurfacing, I don't know if we would just say we're gonna overlay whatever's there, but we just need to make sure we include that extra material so that wherever they pave to, that they've got enough tonnage to take and add that blending gravel for the slope. And that's what was missed on that last one. So, yeah, it could be just a matter of overlay existing, for the existing ones like that. Or if we want to extend them to property, then I guess we'd have to look at that too.
Okay, so was that a motion you made?
Yes.
Okay, so Councillor Coogan has a motion to bring back the policy around paving to a GNP. Any discussion on that motion? Or notice the motion, I guess it'd be. Not seeing any, call the question, all in favor? Okay, we'll see that one back to the GNP. Before I get to you, just checking, have we seen if that GNP meeting is still?
I looked at the last two agendas, we didn't cancel it
Yeah,
at the
that's,
last.
I don't remember seeing it come up.
So I guess we're on unless council says otherwise.
Okay.
Because it is a 5 o'clock meeting, yeah.
Councillor, sorry, Dean, I think you had your hand up? No, okay, Richard?
Okay, so based on that discussion, you were asking if that's enough time to bring something back. So, again, I am not in the whole mix of this. However, I don't know that we need to go and gather a lot of data from elsewhere other than bring up these questions, sit down with everyone and say, okay, we've got some of this, can we get some direction maybe? You know, one of the bigger ones is gonna be, you know, the percentages. But some of this, I think before we can, probably the next step after, maybe looking at getting some engineering, once we've got maybe the roads that we wanna look at, get them going on that. But I think we could probably, I would say, hey, let's wait till the next GNP, like why not get it going, even if it's we get some of it, at least we'll have some stuff taken care of, and then maybe some more questions come out of that for the next one. But if there is a meeting, I would start looking at it.
So then, through the chair to administration, my suggestion is we don't cancel the 20th meeting and make that one of the primary topics of that meeting. Just, if we've put a significant amount of money in the budget for this, so it's gonna require a significant conversation, so let's start that conversation sooner rather than later.
And I agree, if we have a conversation on that and then the conversation on the road policy, that's probably gonna be a good agenda as it is. Mr. Frank?
Yeah, your worship, members of council, yeah, we can have it for available, the information that we gathered from the open house, that we'll have that summary of that information. And then again, the discussion will be around which, if you proceed, A, B, which model that you use, and then C, priorities. And then based on that, you would then be able to move forward with a program, or we would draw up a program for council consideration at a later council meeting.
I've got an email drafted that I'll send to administration and council that has a bunch of questions and information that I'll want for that meeting, so.
Okay, thank you. And I have one further question. This just came out of the public hearing here in Whitecourt where they're talking about the process in regards to when we've been turning the cold mix back. I know with our operations, if we have a new operator for, say, grader running the road, we have kind of a program to make sure that they actually can do what we say they're doing before we just let them go. When we're turning the cold mix back, one of the questions from a couple residents was the individuals who are doing that rehab, do we have essentially like a training or something to actually show that the people know the process of what they're doing on that, and they're not just, you know, cutting and running on it? So just curious.
Yeah.
Just to, you know, make sure the people that are doing it are competent was essentially what the couple residents were asking.
To the Reeve and council, as far as an actual program training specifically, not so much. However, the process we do, we don't go out there, like when we say turn it back to gravel or rip it up, we don't take the grader and just go through and kind of rip it. We have that pulvey.
Yeah.
So we will go through, you know, we paint off the section from here to here, we're gonna do it, so we rip it with the grader first, and then we go with that pulvey, and we're essentially just putting it back to gravel. So it's just a matter of pulverizing until it's fine enough that we don't have any big clumps. And we try to avoid getting down into the base as well. We're ideally just pulverizing that oiled material, because what's under that should be gravel. We try not to mix that in as best as we can. So if we do end up getting to that stage of this year, that's kind of the method we use, and that's up to the foreman to just keep an eye on when we have pulverized it enough to call it back to gravel.
Yeah, and so they said that the foreman out there is at least familiar with the process and how to, so that was kind of the question from some of the residents.
Yeah. And in the past, I think I haven't really heard much feedback as far as when we pulverize it and put it back to gravel that they say it's not pulverized enough. You know, it's probably nothing that anybody wants to see on the road, but it has been, I think, achieving what we're trying to do there, able to maintain with the grader after. So.
Any other questions for Richard? Not seeing any. Can I get a motion? Councillor Wilhelm?
A motion that council accepts the February 2024 infrastructure status report as information.
Okay, motion on the floor, call the question, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much for your time, Richard.
Yep.
CAO report, last one on the list there, Mr. Frank.
Your worship, members of council, as mentioned by Councillor Dean, I attended the law seminar for Reynolds or Brownlee, and then on this Friday I'll attend the Reynolds Mirth one up in Grand Prairie due to the fact that wasn't available prior to that. We've rescheduled the George Cuff workshop for May 22nd at Blue Ridge at 9 a.m. and it's in your calendar marked in regards to that. We also have our final assessment numbers, and we've invited Municipal Affairs as well as Accurate Assessment to your March 13th council meeting, so you'll get an update in regards to the final numbers, and then we'll begin the process of putting together the final budget figures for council's consideration to ensure that we have it out by the end of May. On Monday, we met with the town of Whitecourt regarding the aerial pumper. Both parties are clear on the use of the pumper. We have an agreement under the ICF that both parties are following, and if council does want to indicate a change in services, the town is asking that we need to notify them under Section 54 of the Municipal Government Act that says that they're not allowed to provide services unless we give them permission in our municipality.
Just to that point, when we had this discussion around council, you were on holidays, so you weren't there, but one of the things that was asked is if, I think it's number 2 on the arbitrator's award, that we could list the types of fires that it's available for. And we did ask, especially, I understand that commercial and industrial fires are kind of a different entity on its own, but if the town doesn't want the aerial pumper to leave its boundaries, if we can use that number 2 from the arbitrator's award in the letter and state the, the list, the type of fires that it can go to have the comfort for our industrial users, that would be.
Yeah, so your worship, members of council, what I would recommend that administration provide you with an RFD in regards to the specific use or where the aerial pumper would have value in the county, and then based on that discussion, determine whether or not council wants to proceed with that, and then we can amend our letter under the ICF agreement to say to the town, right? Because we have to notify them every year.
Yeah, and I think if we can do that, that was kind of part of our last discussion, because we do have 2 large industrial players in the edge of town that believe that it'll work on their site and they want that available, so.
Okay, your worship, we'll do an RFT up, because it's, yeah. Okay. The auditors are in the process of reviewing our documents that they've requested. They'll be here in the 3rd week of March, and then in April, their annual presentation to council on last year's operations and stuff. On Monday as well, Mr. World, myself, and Mrs. Ludwig met with our human resource consultant for the manager of finance, planning, and the director of infrastructure, and we are now in the process of reaching out to, the consultant is reaching out to potential candidates to have them come and interview in person. As indicated earlier, Mr. World will provide you with some updates on regards to our asset retirement obligations, and part of that through the open house, they gravel reclamation for our gravel pits is part of that asset retirement obligation. And so he'll give you, our consultants actually will have the draft report for us by Friday, and once they review the number, then they'll present that number to council, just so that council's aware that there is that cost associated with all our retirement obligations, as well as he'll provide you with that gravel royalty. I'll mention that to him as well, because we do have that information, right? And after the RMA convention, Municipal Affairs is hosting an ICF engagement session, and as a result of that, they're proposing changes to the legislation and are asking administration for some input, and we're doing it through our association, the Alberta Association of Rural Administrators, and so I'll report to council in regards to those findings and what they're contemplating. And that's all I have.
Okay, Councillor Coolin.
Yeah, through the chair to CAO. What is the regulation like when we have gravel operators in the municipality? Are they required to post a bond for reclamation?
Joan can actually,
The chair to Councillor Kilkin. If it's a Class 2 pit in which the Alberta government isn't participating in any approvals, then the municipality takes security. If it's a Class 2 pit or the operator is going into the water, then the reclamation is collected by the province, and the province holds that. So for instance, those pits down in the Pride Valley area, the reclamation is all held by the province.
Okay, so then my second question would be, what is the ruling on the pits that are operated by the municipality?
like our own pit.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have an obligation. No, we don't require a bond unless we're over a certain size. And we keep it under 5 acres at any given time. I believe that's 5 acres is the threshold.
5 hectares, sorry.
What's that?
5 hectares.
5 hectares. And as long as we're under that, we don't require a bond. No.
Any other questions for the CEO? Just one comment, I would like to make sure you thank your staff, everybody who was present in both open houses, all the support that we got from the public, or for the public, for the questions and the answers that they did. Their time there was very much appreciated.
I will pass that on. Thank you.
Councillor Wilhelm.
A motion the council accepts the CAO report as information.
All right, motion on the floor, call the question, all in favor? And that brings us down to number 12, Councillor Wilhelm.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, no discussion on that. Call the question, all in favor? And we are adjourned at 10:57.